Why do we indulge in art? Maybe some of you will say that art is about beauty, and the thing of beauty is a joy forever. Well, that's bullshit. Art can be gross, gory, and downright disgusting. In a good way. So, why do we make art? Every form of art tells a story, whether that be a song, or a painting, or a play, or a movie. But what do stories do? They stimulate us emotionally. So art is not about beauty. It is about the emotional impact. Or maybe that's what most of the film critics want to believe. While it is true that good art stimulates us emotionally, it's just one of the things it does. I'm sure there must be thousands of research papers out there that can explain the biology and psychology of how art and entertainment work. I'm going to tell you what art does for me. It's subjective, so take it with a pinch of salt. For me, it works on 3 levels: primal, emotional, and intellectual. If you really want to understand the primal needs of human beings, read this book, A Theory of Motivation by Abraham Maslow, who was an American psychologist. I don't want to get into too much detail. In evolutionary biology, it's called the 4 F's: fighting, fleeing, feeding, and fornicating. So if your action movie gives the audience the adrenaline rush even without a strong script, it's still a success because you achieved the intended effect. And let's say you create a protagonist with a properly defined goal, reasons for the audience to care about the protagonist, conflicts at every turn. Every character is 3-dimensional. The antagonist is strong and the universe you have created is perfect. But for some reason, the audience couldn't experience the adrenaline rush. You failed, despite doing everything right. Because at the end of the day, it is about the impact. Everything else is just tools and ways to achieve that. Same goes for erotica or a survival story or any other story for that matter that's meant to trigger your primal self. While watching the movie, what are you feeling? After you have watched the movie, what do you feel? Joy, rage, melancholy, inspired. This is the second level, the emotional part. And then there's a third level, intellectual. Art can be dumb and primal, dry and cerebral, or extremely emotional. Art can also be primal, emotional, and cerebral simultaneously. And that's where good science fiction works come in. Some of the best sci-fi movies and arguably some of the best movies ever, including 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Terminator, The Matrix, Donnie Darko, Minority Report, Eternal Sunshine of Spotless Mind, Children of Men, V for Vendetta, The Dark Knight, Moon, Edge of Tomorrow, Interstellar, and Blade Runner 2049 weren't even nominated for the Best Picture category. The ones that got nominated like Clockwork Orange, E.T., Star Wars, District 9, Avatar, Inception, Gravity, Her, The Martian, Mad Max, and Arrival didn't win, never had a chance. And Shape of Water, that won Oscar, is not really a science fiction movie. It's a fantasy. Also, it's not that good. It's not The Dark Knight good. It's okay. Academy snubs sci-fi movies and some critics don't take them seriously. Could be bias, generation gap, or simply lack of intellect. Let's see why they're wrong. Since a good science fiction movie works on all the 3 levels, It also covers the 4 E's of cinema: entertainment, education or enlightenment, experience, and enrichment. So how does science fiction achieve that? Every movie or novel is a drama, and so is every science fiction work, but it can be any other genre too. It can be a comedy, action, romance, suspense, murder mystery, thriller, adventure, alternate history, fantasy, horror, philosophical, political, satire, neo-noir, or speculative. With science fiction, you have the freedom to explore any genre. It has something for everyone. The job of a science fiction writer, apart from entertaining us, is to imagine, inspire, and invent the future. Not always, but most of the time, science fiction is not about the present reality. Maybe that's one of the complaints of people who don't like science fiction. They say it's escapism. That's funny. Science fiction is about a reality that might exist in the future. But has it ever happened before? I mean, science fiction has been around for 200 years now. Has fiction ever turned to fact? Mary Shelley's Frankenstein predicted organ transplants. This was in 1818. The first successful organ transplant was done in 1954. Jules Verne predicted moon landing in 1865 in his novel From the Earth to the Moon, 104 years before the first moon landing. He also predicted electric submarines, newscasts, lasers, and video conferencing, among other things. H.G. Wells predicted nuclear weapons, cell phones, voicemail, genetic engineering, and the concept of invisibility. Mark Twain predicted internet almost 100 years before the internet was even a thing. Ray Bradbury predicted self-driving cars and earbuds. Arthur C. Clarke predicted smartwatches, iPads, and satellites. Douglas Adams, ebooks. Philip K. Dick, virtual reality and holograms. Hugo Gernsback, solar power. Isaac Asimov, artificial intelligence, and Google. I have used the word predicted, but you can always replace it with influenced or inspired. I can go on and on, but you get my point. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. H.G. Wells in 1933, in his novel The Shape of Things to Come, predicted Second World War. Don't replace predicted with influenced or inspired here. It won't make any sense.
Mr. Wells, in your last book, The Shape of Things to Come, you predicted war in 1940. Do you still adhere to that opinion?
Yes, I still think that 1940 is the likely date. There's a tremendous lot of war preparation and war feeling accumulating in Europe and in the world generally, but I don't think a war situation is likely to arrive before 1940. Lift its voice.
Can the world not attain salvation without bloodshed?
No, I think it's quite impossible that we shall get peace in the world and prosperity without a great deal more bloodshed. Just how much bloodshed, just how much suffering humanity has to go through, that depends on an incalculable factor. It depends upon the wisdom and the goodwill and the generosity of human beings. So far, they've been a little short in those elements.
Is there a war situation in Europe today?
I don't think so. There is the accumulation of war forces all over the world. But I do not see a war happening in Europe within the next 5 or 6 years.
How about Asia?
There the danger may be greater.
Can you suggest a cure to the present economic ills of the world?
What a splendid question. If I could, then I should be the most marvelous prophet that the world had ever seen.
If only the world had read and understood his work back then, so much destruction and death could have been avoided. But the world usually ignores intellectuals, and the herd always wins by eventually destroying themselves. So no one wins actually. He warned that global government is the only way to prevent nuclear wars. No one listened to him, obviously, and Second World War happened at the cost of approximately 80 million lives. Science fiction can exaggerate the present political, social and economic scenario to give a better picture or understanding of what tomorrow will be like. It acts as a mirror to today's society. It prepares us for tomorrow so that we could prevent ourselves from the catastrophes. After all, it's better to prevent and prepare than to repent and repair. Science fiction gained popularity at the end of the 19th century in France and Britain. Some experts argue that it was not a coincidence. H.G. Wells, who was British, and Jules Verne, who was French, are regarded as two of the greatest science fiction writers ever. These two empires were scientifically most forward and hence were dominating the rest of the world. If you are familiar with the principle of causality, you know what I mean. The most developed nations make science fiction, and the nations that make science fiction become the most developed, creating a positive feedback loop. We all know which country is dominating the science fiction genre for the last 100 years. It helps to develop critical thinking in children and teaches them to question the status quo and see things differently. Jules Verne novels inspired Edwin Hubble to discover galaxies beyond Milky Way. Robert Heinlein was a major influence on Carl Sagan. Science fiction turned Elon Musk into such a great visionary. Do you see where I'm going with this? Science fiction elevates an individual's ability to think, which eventually contributes to the overall growth of the society. I live in Mumbai, India. This is where Bollywood is, the film industry of India. I have many interests, and one of them is writing. I have written a few science fiction scripts and pitched them to some production houses. Some of them are big ones too. Even after they liked it, they didn't agree to turn it into a movie. When you look at Bollywood, it doesn't feel like you're living in the 21st century, and it's affecting the growth of the entire nation. The society we are living in today is the product of the collective imagination of science fiction writers. In a way, they invented it by imagining it. The Oscars need to be more progressive, and Bollywood, to be honest, who gives a fuck? Even Albert Einstein didn't win Nobel Prize for theories of relativity. So awards don't really matter in the real world. What matters is what stands the test of time. Nikola Tesla said, "Let the future tell the truth and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future for which I have really worked is mine." It would be childish to call science fiction the best genre, since different genres have different flavors. But science fiction is definitely one of the most important ones. I rest my case. Live long and prosper. I'm Abhinav, and you're watching Blankboard.